for a moment of silence. Let's have a moment of silence for that 4-year-old that was involved in the accident over the weekend. Thank you, and God bless America. Kathy, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mr. Salazar?
Here.
Mr. Rutledge?
Here.
Mrs. Costa? Here. Mrs. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mrs. Hall?
Here.
Mrs. Thurston?
Here.
Mr. Ryder?
Here.
Chairman Kruzel?
Here. Thank you all for being present. Number 4, Superintendent's report. We have a special guest, Mr. Drezek.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Longi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I just want to take the opportunity to not just thank all of you, but obviously the entire Enfield Public Schools family for all the support that you've given to me and to my family during obviously a very difficult time. The support that I've received from everyone over the last several weeks, to be quite honest, is overwhelming. And it's probably going to take me months to actually thank everybody, especially if I try to do it individually. But I wanted to take the opportunity this evening while I had you and anyone who happened to be watching at home, just to express. I'm having a hard time with words the last few weeks, so I probably won't get it right. But I had the opportunity to say thank you to everyone, and I wanted to make sure I did it for the first time, getting the opportunity to see everybody and have a conversation with all of you in the room at the same time. It's funny. Over the years, Andy and I have always, when we meet new hires, we always tell everybody that when you don't really just come to work here, you're really part of a family. And even at times it may seem dysfunctional, like a lot of families are. But nothing has really been more evident to me over the past several weeks about the care and the support and the well wishes that I've gotten from everyone. Really confirmed what we've always believed about how special this place is, and not just the Enfield Public Schools, hearing from people throughout the entire community, different organizations that aren't even affiliated with us. I'll never be able to say thank you enough, but I at least wanted to give a start. And I just wanted to, there's been so many people internally that have really helped, and I don't want to miss anyone. So I'm only going to say one tonight. I don't say it often, but Mr. Longi has been a rock through this whole process for me. And I want to at least publicly on camera thank him, because I'll probably never do it again. That's an inside joke. So thank you to Andy for doing everything you have over the last several weeks and deflecting as much as you could away from me while I was dealing with something at home. So on that note, I'm going to actually get back to business, because I think that's the best thing for everyone. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you didn't get an opportunity to see the Enfield High School graduation virtual ceremony, I think given the circumstances, it was as good as we could have done, and I think it exceeded a lot of expectations, including mine when you finally got to see the final product. But it wasn't because of a lack of effort. The work that Ms. Clark and the entire Enfield High School team did to put that celebration together, although it was an hour plus on television, the countless hours that went into actually planning the event, and the feedback that I've received over the last week or so about how special the kids felt getting the opportunity to drive in, although it wasn't ideal and it never would be. But at least every student had their opportunity to have their moment on a stage, to get their family to be able to take a picture, and although it was done over 2 days. The amount of work and effort and energy that went into making that day as special as it could be for our kids is something I can't thank them enough for, but I wanted to make sure I did that on camera for you guys, for everybody who happens to be watching this evening as well. A couple of just kind of housekeeping things, because I wasn't at the last meeting, and there's some housekeeping things that I need to get out to you as a board that I did miss out on one. You may have heard a discussion at the town council last evening about a transition to our workers' comp and liability carrier. The town manager has been keeping me in the loop throughout the process. I know the insurance committee will have an opportunity when we finally get to meet again to talk about it. But we are exploring going back to Kerma, which was our original carrier for those of you who've been around. Probably it has to be at least 5 years since we originally left, but we're heading back in that direction. I see Mr. Barrasa's face, but he had been sending me pictures. Our iPads have arrived. We're in the process of figuring out a plan on how to get them set up and distributed, but they're physically here. The good news is we got in right under the radar because there's a lot of other districts that are out there trying to procure them now, and ours are here and locked. So they're here. On another side of that, finally the application for the Federal CARES Act was delivered today. So now we know how we can pay for them because the CARES money was set aside to do that. So things are starting to fall in line. I know there's a lot of questions still surrounding, the potential of a reopening in September. About 5 minutes before I got on this call, I did get an update from the Commissioner's office that we do have a call with him on Thursday. So we expect the guidance to be released at some point, either Thursday evening or at some point Friday. There are a lot of speculation out there, and I've talked to other districts who are in a very similar position than we are with regards to planning, because the concepts that are being floated with going all virtual for certain grades, going all individually, grade levels going virtual. There's some discussions about having a designated teacher in each grade level to just teach virtual because we may have to shift kids around. The bottom line is nobody really knows yet. And we're not going to know until we get the guidance from the state. And a lot of what we're hearing is, I'm sure you've seen some things on the national news, that there are spikes in cases popping up throughout the country. And there is a genuine concern that that may happen again, particularly in Connecticut. So I think a lot of it is sort of to be determined once we see what the guidelines are going to be. So hopefully once I get them, I will forward those along. I don't anticipate getting them on the Commissioner's call. I think he's giving us a heads up that they're coming. So when I know more, I will share with you. And I think the committee will then have their work cut out for them once the guidelines are actually made public. And lastly, I know I've been getting some questions over the past week or two about, as we're trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. And I know there's been discussions about possibly holding in-person meetings again. One discussion we've had here is about when we're going to open for the summer when it comes to central office. So Kathy can hear this, but the rest of central office doesn't know yet. We're striving to have a plan to open up central office for after the 4th of July. And the reason for that, it's still going to look a little different. Our staff here has done a remarkable job over the last 3 months, making sure that we're adhering to all the guidelines and really coming up with a rotation and taking advantage of working virtually. So our staff, when we do have staff members that need to come into the office, we actually have a schedule when each department, so that we're not overwhelming having too many people in the building. Because the other side of that is we have to keep up with the cleaning requirements if we're going to have employees come into the building. We're going to continue on with that process until after the 4th of July holiday, most likely through most of the summer, but there is going to be a need to have some people in central office for members of the public who may need to come in for registration and things like that. So that plan is forthcoming, but I have gotten a few questions on when people are allowed back. The reality is everybody's been back, it's just at different times and working on a different schedule. And it seems to be working to this point, but as we start getting more, geared up for the beginning of next year, we're going to have to come up with a more flexible schedule to get people in and out of the office. There are still going to be restrictions. I know I've gotten questions about, town hall is open. If you've been to town hall, they took a lot of precautions in order to operate, like the plastic things that dividers and, tape on the floor and all that stuff. We didn't have the opportunity to do that here yet because of the use of the building. But we're going to start working toward that. So I just wanted the board to know there will be somebody here throughout the summer at all times. It may not be everybody, but we're starting to put that schedule together. And lastly, in your packet, there is information about a virtual program with the Enfield High School Culinary Arts is performing. The culinary arts teacher is actually your Mystery Eagle, Jeff O. He's going to be offering it to students that are grades 5 through 8. It's a virtual culinary program that'll start the week of the 6th and run through July 27th. Any students that are interested, they'll have to pre-register. And that was actually presented to me back in April, that typically the culinary program that Chef O runs at Manchester Community College, he was given notice that they weren't going to run it this summer and asked if we can get creative to help those kids get a virtual cooking experience over the summer. And that will conclude the superintendent's report.
Thank you, sir. All right, so I'll go around starting with Mr. LeBlanc. Any questions for the superintendent?
Oh, no. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you. Mr. Salazar.
Yes, I do have a question. It's an item that was brought up at the curriculum meeting and subcommittee meeting, and I don't expect necessarily the curriculum to have the information, but I was hoping that to take this opportunity to ask Chris or Andy if they can provide us information regarding the number of students that did not submit their packets. I don't expect that information now, but I would like to ask them to please provide us that information at a future date.
Principals have been gathering that information over the past several weeks. So once we get everything consolidated, we'll send something out.
Okay, thanks, Chris, and great to have you back as well.
Thank you. Mr. Rutledge.
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Costa.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LeBlanc.
I have a question. We've had a few school board members kind of say that we would be back to meeting in person again. But at the school reopening committee meeting, it sounded like Buildings and Grounds had said we potentially won't get back into the town hall until at least mid-August. And we need to get back to meeting in person, but one of the things that we need to take into consideration is that people have the option to call in virtually. Let's say one of us has to self-quarantine, or one of us has a risk and really shouldn't be out, or would prefer not to be out, or could have been exposed but could continue to go to meetings. I think that's something we're going to have to think about for the duration of the term, as long as we are anticipating the second wave of COVID coming back. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because it's definitely a concern of mine. So.
Okay. Yeah,
I just feel like we can't go ahead and make these statements that we'll be back without having, especially Buildings and Grounds on board. And, if there's a rise in the cases, we may not be back at all. So I just want to put that out there because I've gotten a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, that they're looking at middle of August before, and that's still tentative. It's nothing set in stone. So thank you.
My point is we can't make those statements if we don't know.
Okay. Any questions, Ms. Hall?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thurston.
I'm all set.
Mr. Ryder.
I wanted to welcome Chris back, but I also wanted to thank Mr. Longy. So thank you for hanging in there with us and answering every email. And anytime we reached out, you did a great job. And I'm glad that Chris is back, but I'm also glad that we have you here because it was as seamless as it could be. Thank you.
So as being the last one, I ditto all the comments. So we'll leave it at that. So we move on to number 5, unfinished business. A, policy revision 9132, bylaws of the board, standing committee, second reading. Do I have a motion for a second reading?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge. Any second? Oh, did you second, Bill? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Salazar, second by Mr. Salazar. Any discussion? Ms. Costa.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend policy 9132, line 52, to correct a typo. The word TWO2 is misspelled as TOW.
So, Kathy, do we need a?
No, I can make that change.
Okay, so we're gonna. The motion is amended. Any other discussion? Sensing none, roll call, please.
Mr. LeBlanc,
4.
Mr. Salazar,
4.
Mr. Rutledge,
4.
Mrs. Costa,
4.
Mrs. LeBlanc,
I'm going to continue to vote no until necessary changes are made in the policy committee.
Mrs. Hall,
No.
Mrs. Thurston,
No.
Mr. Ryder,
No.
Chairman Kuzel,
4.
motion passes.
Thank you. Number 6, new business. 6A, policy revision number 6145, eligibility extracurriculum activities, grades 6 through 12, first reading.
So
Do I have
moved.
a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Salazar. Any discussion or explanation on this one? Or Ms. Costa, you have a question?
I don't know whether it's a question or a comment, but I was just curious as to, I know the purpose of the policy was around the fact that we had a pass-fail grading system, and so therefore we don't necessarily have the same grading system to judge eligibility by. But I was just curious about the 1.7 grade point average. Personally, seems a little low to me. And I just want to make sure that it's not a number that we picked so that everybody could play sports, but that it's truly incenting the right behavior and the right motivation to students to perform. I view high school as still being educational as primary and playing sports as secondary, and that, you know, we should make sure that we're not setting the bar too low. Just my comment. So I was just wondering if that had been considered at all in looking at this policy, or whether it should have been. Thank you.
Any answer on that from the policy committee?
I can tell you that 1.7 was the GPA. The 4 point that is in here and crossed out was a typo that we just didn't catch it in the last round of revisions. So whether 1.7 is the correct number or not is a separate discussion, but that is the number that was the policy prior to this revision based on the pass-fail.
Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Wendy, you actually make a really interesting point there. You know, because I know that even if you want to play sports at the college level, I believe most Division I and II schools require at least, I think it's either a 2.3 or a 2.5 GPA to be eligible. If you want to come from high school to playing sports in college. Actually, and Mr. Longy or Mr. Drezek, you know, obviously you would have this today, but it would actually be really interesting to get some data, maybe, you know, either an aggregate or maybe even on a team by team basis, as to how many of our students actually either one, don't qualify for sports participation under that policy, or how many of the student athletes are on the brink of that. You know, to Wendy's point, you know, I have to admit, it's persuasive. I do agree with it. You know, the primary purpose of the school system is to educate. I'm not taking anything away from sports. I love sports. I played sports in high school. That's not even the issue. It teaches very valuable lessons, but it would be curious to, you know, see, you know, to try and quantify the impact of this policy.
Any other comments? Mr. Salazar.
Oh, go ahead. I have one when
Sorry.
he's done.
Okay, Mr. Salazar, then Ms. LeBlanc.
Okay, to Mr. Rutledge's point regarding what would be the impact of, I'm not sure that I understand the question that is being posed. Would we not have to at least theoretically establish what the new threshold would be to be able to identify how many students would not qualify?
Well, no, if I can just clarify, and Tina, I apologize. I know you were next. Basically what I'm saying is, so let's say, you know, right now the policy is, or even before the policy was that they had to have a C- GPA. It was 4.0. It should have been 1.7. I'm going to guess it was actually the 1.7 that was truly being applied. But what I'm asking is, so let's say a particular sports team has 50 kids that are interested in playing on it. I'd be interested in knowing like how many of the kids interested in playing it either didn't qualify because of that policy or pretty much like we're on the brink. That's what I'm basically asking.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be argumentative. I'm just asking for clarification.
Oh, no, definitely.
Chris, so you're saying you're asking for how many of the kids today qualify to play sports only because they have a 1.7.
Right, and how many actually don't meet that? How many kids who might have been interested, like maybe got kicked off a team because they weren't academically eligible?
Okay, I understand the question. Thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Blank.
First, I'll say you can't really compare the high school GPA to the college GPAs, because when kids leave high school and apply to college, their GPAs are recalculated. Second of all, my question, I don't know if Andy or Chris could answer this. Does the CIAC designate a GPA that the districts must uphold in their policy, or is that directed by the state, or is just something that the district feels comfortable?
CIAC issues that.
Okay, so the CIAC is basically telling us what our GPA needs to be, what the minimum GPA needs to be. But what I can tell you that's happening at the high school has been a fabulous doing by the coaches. With Power School, the students are held accountable, and they have to report back to their coaches on a weekly basis. If they see that the students' grades are going down and they're not upholding their grades, they actually are assigned tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and they have to go to those teachers where they're struggling during Eagle Hour and get extra help. And if they don't prove that they've gotten extra help, many of them can't participate in a game for that given week. So although you're trying to get a number, that number fluctuates greatly. But I can say that Enfield High has done an amazing job trying to be proactive so that kids don't have to not play, and try to get them the extra help they need as a preventative measure. It doesn't matter if all your other grades are an A and you have 1 D because you're struggling in an honors class. You are still expected to go get extra help during Eagle Hour. Based on the tier or the grade that you have dictates how many times you have to go during Eagle Hour to get that extra help from the teacher. So I think that's fabulous.
Thank you, Mr. Blank. Ms. Costa, did you have your hand up?
Well, I did, because I just wanted to comment that, yes, the CIAC rule is 1.7, but many school districts have implemented something different. That's the minimum requirement. And I mean, it's nice to hear that the high school is holding the kids to a standard like that, but it's certainly not policy driven. And I still question whether 1.7 is the right number and how it was determined, other than it's the CIAC minimum guidelines.
Mr. Blank.
I would think that you could really, I get that there's other districts that do that, but having dealt with parents that have potentially had kids that could fail out of a sport, they'll go right to the CIAC website and find out what that minimum is. So like you said, it is a suggestion. I'm just a little bit more comfortable with it because it's a CIAC guideline.
If I could just jump in real quick, just
Go ahead, Mr. Harvey.
Lose sight of what you guys are voting on. This is a 6,000 series that has been passed already. What we're looking to do tonight is just get through next year. The policy committee can always relook at the policy in general. But I think if we start breaking down word for word, we're going to lose the flavor of what we're trying to do tonight. Tonight, we're just trying to make sure that the high school is able to calculate eligibility properly, which they're waiting on you guys to do. So I think if we now start to open up what is proper GPA, I would strongly suggest, if as a board you want to look at that, you definitely get a subcommittee, and you need to have coaches and the athletic director involved, because I think they can give you a very good rationale of why it is that number. They can give you data on why we look at it that way. So that's just my 2 cents. You guys, you're the board. You can continue to debate this tonight. I just don't know if it's the proper format for looking at a C- average. That's just my thoughts.
And I didn't hit my unmute button fast enough to answer the question. So yes, I was going to say that is the CIAC guidelines. There's also another side to that, and I understand the concern about trying to raise the academic standards for athletes. But as you start to explore this more, you'll all start hearing stories about kids who are barely making it to that 1.75 grade point average, and the only motivation to make that 1.75 grade point average is so they can participate in sports. So there is another angle to that, another aspect of it, trying to keep kids engaged who otherwise may fall below that threshold. And just a reminder, I know we haven't had a chance to do our athletic presentations, particularly the winter sports, and there was no spring sports. But embedded in every presentation that our athletic director presents to the board, he actually will provide our percentage of kids who were academically eligible and how many kids couldn't participate. And I believe on the fall season, we were over 98%, and don't hold me to that. So, whether we agree with the threshold is, our kids and our coaches are doing a great job making sure that that academics come first.
Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Longi, did I catch something in your comment that you said the high school was urgently awaiting this or something to that effect?
Sorry. So in order for report cards to go out, they're going to run eligibility. It goes on the end of every report card. So when Mr. Salazar, someone's asking for how many kids aren't eligible, they keep a list of that every semester. So every time report cards are run, they have an eligibility list. They need to do that as well with this. Right now, they're going to base it off of 5.5 credits, which is 2B of the policy you're looking at. That's what they're going to run it off of. But they can't hit that final button until this is approved, because right now, looking at GPA is policy and they can't violate that. So as soon as we know that we can eliminate the 2A, Mr. Clark is the one who does it. He's ready to start running things.
Okay, no, because the reason I ask, and I know it doesn't happen often, but there have been times where there's been extenuating circumstances where, assuming a policy had a first reading, we waived the waiting period to the second reading and just did the second reading in the same meeting as the first reading. I was asking how urgent this is, because if it is very urgent, then, that might be a consideration. That's just what I was trying to find out.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to do it all tonight, but I don't think it's critical. They'll just the eligibility list will just come out later than usual.
Okay, very good.
That was my question as well. I mean, we can do a second reading and get this over with, and just so it doesn't keep anybody waiting. But if you say we can wait, because we are going to have a meeting on the 7th, if we can wait till the 7th for the second reading, then we can do that.
I would say, since some board members had questions about this, I would follow the procedure. It can wait till the 7th. But thank you for asking, Mr. Rutledge.
Okay, any other discussion? So we're doing a first reading only. Just roll call, please.
Mr. LeBlanc,
4.
Mr. Salazar,
Yes, 4.
Mr. Rutledge,
4.
Mrs. Costa,
4.
Mrs. LeBlanc,
No.
Mrs. Hall,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurston,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
For the amendment, yes.
Chairman Krizel.
4.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we'll put the second reading on our next agenda. 6B, approval of the 2020-2021 Healthy Food Certification. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Thurston, seconded by Mr. LeBlanc. So if memory serves me, we want to vote no for this. Is that what?
Yes.
No.
That's the recommendation from, trying to find it in my packet. I thought it was in the packet that said that we go above and beyond now, and they do not want to do it because it adds more work.
Correct. So essentially, the motion is going to be that you first of all, this is an annual form that the action that the board has to take through our nutrition services department, and there's a memo is included in all of your packets. That the state requires that we complete the certification statement certifying that all of our food items sold to students will or will not meet the Connecticut nutritional standards. Our school lunch program does meet all the federal and state nutrition guidelines. However, if we were to choose to certify the healthy food certification, there's an additional set of requirements that go along with that, and it could jeopardize the reimbursement that we receive for our nutrition service program. So your vote would actually be to not certify the healthy food certification, but we want to make it very clear that our current nutrition services program does meet or exceed all the federal and state guidelines when it comes to healthy food. It's confusing. We have this conversation every June.
Every year.
But that's essentially what you're doing. So the motion would be to not certify the healthy food certificate.
So why don't we reword the motion to not certify, not approve the certification for the healthy food? So, Ms. Thurston, are you okay with changing the motion to not certify?
Sure.
And the second was Mr. LeBlanc. Are you okay with seconding not certifying? So that means if we vote yes, we are not certifying. If we vote no, we are certifying.
Correct.
Just to clarify for our people watching out in internet world. So any other discussion on this?
Yes, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Salazar.
You know, being new at this, and I heard that this comes up every year. So how is it that this gets to be an issue every year? How is it that some state entity or a federal entity that is asking us to get certified? How does this happen every year? How does this come to be an issue every year?
The Board of Education annually, per state guidelines, is that the board has to vote to certify whether you are certified, to vote to approve that your healthy food certification is either yes or no. If you vote that you are certifying the healthy food certification, that means you're bound by the state's requirements as to what you can and cannot serve. It doesn't sound great when you say you're not going to. So that's why we always include that we do actually meet or exceed all the guidelines. But by certifying, you're then bound by their laws. For instance, things like kids bringing in, certain things for birthdays in the elementary school. If you certify yes, you're not permitted to do that. You can't sell snacks at athletic events, even though it's not our food department. It's still on our grounds. So if you want to sell, potatoes at the football games, if your healthy food certification is yes, you cannot do that. So we meet all the requirements for what we physically serve children, but by not certifying, that allows us the flexibility to allow other things to happen at school events. And it also, if you are certified in the positive, there are additional requirements that you have to meet, which can also jeopardize the reimbursement that we get through the federal government and from the state. It sounds confusing, it is, but like I said, it's a conversation we have. And we could pull the history. I don't recall us ever actually voting to certify because of the restrictions in the requirement.
Okay.
And one year we did print the thing, and it was literally a ream of paper by the time we were done printing it all, just for us to look at it to say no. So
the question came up.
So the answer to my question is the state requires that we give this consideration every year.
The state is making you vote yes or no. The recommendation is you vote no because you don't want to have to. And actually, it was a few years ago, we actually gave the entire board a copy of the certification, and it literally was this thing. You can see that.
Yeah, it was. We went through 2 reams of paper, I think, printing it.
So by voting yes, we're saying no.
Exactly. I vote because now we changed the motion to if we vote yes, we are not certifying.
There's a lot of yeses and nos going around. So.
I know. Trust me. I played the tape from last year. We had the same conversation. Any other discussion? Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Salazar,
4, yes.
Mr. Rutledge,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc,
Supposed to be yes?
yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Hall,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurston,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
What Tina said. Yes.
Chairman Cruzel.
Yes, we are not certifying.
We are not certifying.
Thank you.
I don't think the dogs like that response there.
Okay. 6C, discussion and action, if any, regarding the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. Mr. Drezek, you want to take this one?
Sure. So, and again, I apologize. In my absence at the last meeting, we would have brought this up, but looking at the calendar, we realized this is the last official meeting that we're going to have in the month of June when the fiscal year closes out. And in the previous meeting, we had a discussion when the obviously when the world changed, and we had to, although the board didn't officially at that point in time, we had the discussion that the town council hadn't appropriated a 0% budget, but now that has been official, the board just has to make a motion to accept that budget that the town has sent over. And I apologize, I didn't have an opportunity to bring it with me this evening by getting here. But the budget that the town council appropriated to us is a 0% increase. So it's the same number from this current fiscal year. However, the contingent that we can carry over the 2% from this fiscal year until next fiscal year. And there's also a caveat that once the state settles the excess cost, the educational cost sharing formula, which isn't finalized at the moment, last of my knowledge, the town has made a commitment to share whatever funding that happens to be. They didn't want to include that in their appropriation because that number could be subject to change if the state legislature, who isn't meeting, decides to change that. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that figure until at some point throughout the summer. So although we were adopting a 0 with a 2% carryover, that adjustment might be made when the ECS funding gets finalized. The council will then make an additional appropriation like they did last fiscal year, and our number will be adjusted. We work with John Wilcox, and Lorena will square that away. But looking at the calendar, and I apologize, I'm not as prepared for this as I normally are, but when Kathy sent it out, I'm like, oh my God, we have to get the budget done. So we had the discussion on what a 0 and what the impact's going to be. We can revisit that again at another meeting, but we do need to adopt it so that Lorena can physically hit the button in the system to carry over for next year.
So if we get what the state approved, because they approve a biannual budget, then we should be getting an increase from the state, but everything's, the legislature hasn't met, so they can make changes at any time. So
at last count, it was an additional $400,000 or so in the biannual budget.
Yes.
And the last conversation we had with state leaders was because they weren't meeting, they were just going to carry that budget over. However, obviously the fiscal picture in the state has gotten a bit grimmer over the last 3 months. So until they bang the gavel and actually appropriate the funding to each municipality, I wouldn't be comfortable counting on that. I am comfortable with the word of the council that whatever additional funding they get that's designated for schools, they will pass that along because they have done that the last 3 years. But it's really not in the hands of the council at the moment. It's more of the legislature has that ability to make changes depending upon what the fiscal situation is with the state. So once we get that finalized, we'll certainly let everybody know.
Any other discussion before I say something I shouldn't?
Yeah, don't.
I don't see any hands, so roll call, please.
What are we voting on?
Yeah, no one has made a motion yet.
Oh, okay. We need a motion. I'm sorry. We need a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2020-21 budget as the town council passed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Costa, seconded by Mr. Rutledge. Sorry about that. Now, any discussion? Sensing none, roll call, please.
Mr. LeBlanc,
4.
Mr. Salazar,
4.
Mr. Rutledge,
4.
Mrs. Costa,
4.
Mrs. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mrs. Hall,
Yeah.
Mrs. Thurston,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Chairman Krizel.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Number 7, board member comments, and I am going to do a chairman prerogative here, and I'm going first. And my comment is about graduation. I went to at least 4 of the stints or of the hourly things they had, starting at the quarter of the hour and lasting about half hour. And it was phenomenal, what they did for graduation, the drive-through graduation. They literally thought of everything. I mean, they had people coming around and making sure all the volunteers had water and the weather, they just lucked out with the weather completely. But it was just, I went both days at 4 different times, 3 different times, and I stayed one for twice. So, but it was, And they had it was, you know, we have the pomp and circumstance, but they had a little fun with it, and I think everybody enjoyed it. There was no problem with the too many people getting out of their cars and making a scene. It was orderly. Everything was by the book, what I can say. And I just want to thank them publicly that they did an awesome job. And it so happened one of the stints I was there, the photographer from the JI came, and he was telling me how he's been going to different schools and how he just got different pictures and different. It was just this whole year he's been getting different views and different ways of all the graduations in the state. So he even thought it was a great job. So now I will start with Mr. LeBlanc. Any board member comments?
Yep. To just go off of that, I thought I watched it at my house, and I thought and I've seen pictures online. The processionals were fantastic, and again, given the circumstances, the graduation was very well put together. And I loved at the end, the students got their little shot to, talk about some future plans, and we got some bright kids in town going some pretty big places in life. So bravo to all. My second comment is in regards to some may have saw Chief Fox give a presentation last night to the town council. He talked a lot about what our police department does on a town level, and he's basically saying how we're a CALEA accredited police department, and all the good things the officers do throughout town. I want to talk about that from a student perspective as well, because the police department also does a tremendous amount for our youth in town. Just a couple examples that I wrote down include the Explorer program, which a lot of people don't know this, but it's the oldest one in Connecticut and the second oldest in the United States. I believe it was started back in the early 1960s. On top of that, they do the Youth Academy, which is a 2-week program for its ages. It's ages 10 to 13, where these children can go to the academy and I guess learn about policing. And on top of that, for more of our college age and high school age kids, they do an internship program. So the police department as a whole does a tremendous amount for our students. And when the kids are actually in the school building, we have SROs who are consistently there showing their faces and mentoring the kids, and some even teach some law classes. So I just want to throw that out there, that Chief Fox talked more on a town perspective, and I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that the police department does from a youth perspective. Talking about sports now, I just wanted to follow up with the CIAC sports committee. I know there's a lot going on right now, but the CIAC does recommend that. And if you actually look into it, the last week, June 16th, the sports schedules for the fall came out. And our first one scheduled is Enfield High football, freshman, September 10th. So with everything going on, there's still things on the calendar, and we'll get there when we get there, but it's good to see, something scheduled at least for our student athletes. Let's see what else I got. The last big thing I got is I would just like to see what we could do if we could get some ideas going, or maybe somebody could fill me in on what we do to possibly keep in touch with some students over the summer, especially with everything that's happened this past spring with students, and Bill kind of alluded to this tonight with the packet percentage that we're looking into. If we could, if there was individual children out there who might have, otherwise struggled to complete their packets, or, whatever the reason may be where they couldn't do it, what can we do as a district to look into that and follow up with these students to especially get them geared up come the fall again, for they don't fall into the same trap that possibly was a downfall in the spring for them. I know there's so many different circumstances and a bunch of different things that could have happened. But I just want to, have a close tab on these kids for we, can do what we can for them and respect each circumstance and help them out come the fall. And I think part of that is keeping in touch with them over the summer months as well, for we don't lose track of anybody. Besides that, I think that's it for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. Mr. Salazar.
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't muted. The first thing I wanted to do, I just have a couple of comments, but the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to congratulate all of our students in the end of the school year and reaching that milestone. For many of them, the promotion, and obviously for our high school seniors, their graduation. This year has been a historical year, probably for not probably, but for not the right reasons. Significant impact, a lot of negative impacts on the lives of our students. So I want to congratulate each and every single one on their accomplishment. We obviously look forward to having a much better year next year, and I hope it is a much better year for all of our students. I also want to speak to the graduation. Did not attend any of the car things in person, but I did watch it, and the production value was significant. I have to thank everyone that was involved in procuring and securing the production company that put this together, because I think that they did a very good job. I have not heard any negative comments. So I hope that our students and their families are also satisfied with the results. Obviously, not necessarily what they deserve. They deserve the personal acknowledgement and accomplishment, but for what we could get, I thought it was very well done. So I want to congratulate everybody that was involved with that, because I think they did a very good job of identifying this company and ultimately putting this entire program together. Lastly, actually, two more points. Following up on the comment by Mr. LeBlanc, the reason for my question earlier about figuring out which students did not turn in their packets or have not to this day turned in their packets, it's really, as he stated, to follow up and figure out if those students, we may be in contact with them, but are not submitting their packets. It's not likely that if we have an online component or a remote learning component to education next year, it's not likely that things are going to improve for these particular students by themselves. So we need to look into what is it that is missing, what is it that we can do, what do we need to do maybe to prepare during the summer to be able to incentivize them, either them or their parents or both, to make sure that they're participating actively and fully in the school activities for whatever remote component we have next year. And then lastly, I wanted to double check on another comment by Mr. LeBlanc is, was it the Police Explorer program that is the second oldest in the nation? Is that the one that he referred to? I mean, that's certainly yet. Which one?
The Police Explorer. It's the oldest in Connecticut and second oldest in the country, and they have Explorers anywhere from age 13 to 20.
Well, you've educated me today, and yet another reason why to be very proud of this town. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I appreciate it. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Salazar. Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a feeling a lot of congratulations are going to be put out today, and I'd like to do that as well. Like to congratulate all our students and frankly the entire school system as to how we handled this past year. Obviously, we were operating under less than ideal circumstances, to say the least. Everybody had to adapt: the staff, teachers, students, even the parents, and obviously it wasn't easy, but we do have to try and keep moving forward. Build on what we tried to do this past year, and to everybody that put in all the effort, their patience and perseverance. I thank you very much for, everything that you did and everything that you had to go through. Also, kind of building on a point that Mr. Salazar just made a little bit about improvements. I know we have, I know we have the school reopening committee, and obviously the distance learning plan from this past year, it wasn't something we obviously had to do before to anywhere near that level. And just as a suggestion, in case something like this were needed again in the future, would there, I was just wondering if there would be any consideration to maybe even reaching out to one of the, multitude of colleges and universities that have been doing online education for quite a while. Maybe there are some resources there that if there were gaps in our process, maybe they'd be able to provide some feedback as to how we could improve that. I do that in my professional life. We have these session called Stop, Start, and Continue, where we basically look at what we should stop doing, what we need to start doing, but do better, and what we should continue doing. And if we're ever faced with another scenario again where we have to invoke district-wide distance learning, perhaps that wouldn't be such a bad idea to look at other places that have actually done it and try and take some lessons for them. But with that, I'll try and be a little briefer than in the past, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been really busy the past couple of weeks. I watched the virtual awards ceremony for the high school, and I must say everyone did just a phenomenal job. It was so entertaining, and it was nice to see the number and diversity of students receiving awards. I think the staff did a really creative job of creating a memorable night for these kids in the most adverse of situations, truly making lemonade out of lemons. Great job. I did also attend a few phases of the drive-through high school graduations. To me, it was kind of bittersweet. It was unfortunate the students weren't able to have a traditional graduation, but the drive-through was well-planned and organized, and most students seemed pretty excited about walking across the stage, even if they weren't surrounded by their friends and family. And I give special credit to the 9 adults and the wrangler that came out to see their student graduate. I thought that was quite the feat. I watched the virtual graduation last Wednesday night, and again, I think the staff did a phenomenal job trying to make the event memorable. We know nothing can take the place of a traditional graduation, but thanks to the students, parents, staff, and everyone else, that the events that were held were very well done. I attended several CAVE meetings in the past 2 weeks on the reopening of schools in September, where representatives from a lot of the different school districts spoke of the difficulties we might face when it comes time and we get the guidelines. And I also attended a CAVE session titled "Your Students and Staff of Color Are Not Okay. What Can School Boards and Superintendents Do?" And it was led by Dr. Martha Brackeen Harris. Personally, I was a little disappointed that the webinar didn't have more concrete suggestions for actions to be taken, but it did provide different perspectives on what people of color face, and it did generate a lot of conversation. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. Ms. LeBlanc.
Yeah, just a few things. Chris, welcome back. All of us you and your family were in our thoughts and prayers in your absence. We weren't too hard on Andy, but I appreciate Andy's patience and being available if I had a question. I would like to take a minute to congratulate the graduates of Enfield High. It wasn't traditional, to say the least, but I think the anticipation that parents and graduates were having once they got there, Enfield High was really able to make it as personal as they could, and with a lot of Eagle pride. And so many parents were very thankful at the way that the drive-through graduation went. And weather isn't always on our side here at the Enfield School District, and we had probably 2 of the best weather days to have that drive-through graduation. I also watched the virtual award ceremony, and Mr. and Mrs. Mazzone were wonderful MCs. I loved how they incorporated the students that were receiving scholarships. I loved hearing where they were going and what they were going to be studying. There's one girl, and she kept talking about how she wanted to be a pastry chef and open her own pastry shop. I'm going to keep a tab on her because I would love to go visit her someday. But I thought that was wonderful. I also watched the virtual graduation, which was there were so many personal touches, and I love seeing the staff in there because the staff didn't love not being able to be seeing their students every single day. And this was their way of being a part of it, since they couldn't be in person sharing with the graduates up until the last day of school and sharing in the excitement in person that way. A lot of staff also, whether it was a sports team or different things, took time and they delivered signs to individual students' houses, which I thought was really amazing. So thank you to Enfield High for how you handled this. Thank you to the parents and students who had to have the utmost patience during a very anxious time. But I think it came out really well. Scott and I had talked about wanting to thank everyone since we had gotten so many calls from parents. So there may or may not be a video floating around of me and Scott visiting every school. We've gotten a few requests to do some live performances, although we're not there yet. If you haven't seen the video, we can send it to you. But we had a lot of fun, and we wanted to say happy summer. Families, you did it. Teachers, you did it. We did it. Now we just got to prepare for what's going to happen next. Going back to let me see where I'm at. Oh, one of the things, and now I'm going to sound like Scott a little bit. One of the things that was brought to my attention because of my own personal experience was doctors' offices are canceling kids' physicals right now due to COVID, and kids are getting put on a waiting list. Currently, the CIAC hasn't extended their 13-month requirement of when a physical needs to be completed. So when I called my doctor's office to tell them this, they said, no, the districts are going to be a little bit easier on kids getting their physicals. The CIAC is not. So I gave Corey O'Connell a heads up and I said, look, he'll communicate with us once he hears, but he says right now it's still the 13 months. So if your kids need a physical to play sports, they still need to get their physicals done within the 13 months. Also talking about when we do, go back to in-person meetings, we've gotten a lot of correspondence about how we can get the subcommittee meetings and the board meetings to have audiences or at least have people call in. So, once we determine how long we're going to be online, I don't think it sounds like from the town council, we're not going to be in person, or that because of the town hall, we're not going to be in person until at least August. If we can explore different options for that, for the subcommittees as well as the board meetings. Let's see what else I have. I also attended the webinar that CABE had, the Dear School Boards, Your Students and Staff of Color Are Not Okay, What Can School Boards Do? And like Wendy said, it was led by Dr. Martha Bracking Harris. What I loved about it is it almost made you reflect on yourself and your own experiences. And Dr. Martha, I'm just going to simplify it that way, made some excellent points. She said this generation of our kids, they are bold and they're willing to take on hard issues that maybe the adults aren't. And she said this generation, she believes, is going to learn a lot and pass it on to us and pass it down below. And I thought that was really poignant. Dr. Martha also talked about allyship, standing up and saying something. Use your privilege in a way that you're being an ally to people that don't have the same privilege. I looked it up. There's a great website on it. She also talked about the CABE Equity Toolkit, and that's something that we had adopted, and unfortunately we've never gotten to work with since we've had to deal with COVID. She suggested we read this poem, and she said it was kind of ironic right now because we're wearing masks due to the pandemic, but it's called We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar. So I took some time to read that. The other thing she said that was interesting to me is, and I can relate in a certain way, but she said that when these students see the images of George Floyd on the ground, that they will replace those images with their uncle, their brother, their father, another male in their life, and that becomes very scary to them. And then if they're in school, they sometimes relate to their teachers, and so it's a cycle because the teachers are trying to support them. and that made me feel sad. But Dr. Martha said she felt, like this work is never going to be done for years to come, but we can be, as individuals, the change that we need to see. So if any of the board members didn't get a chance to watch it, it's out on the CABE website under professional development. And, I'm committed as a board member to try to see things differently and make sure I'm representing all the students and families and staff in my district. With that being said, I hope everyone has a very safe and healthy summer. I know central office and our staff will be working very hard to see what the next steps are. So just hang in there and await correspondence, but enjoy your summer and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBlanc. Miss Hall.
I too watched the webinar, although I wasn't able to attend it because of a meeting conflict. I watched it online and would agree wholeheartedly with both what Mrs. Costa and Mrs. LeBlanc have added. I won't try to elaborate anymore. They've done a very good job. And that's true of what everyone has said today about the graduation. It was impressive. I want to, as was the award ceremony. There were so many awards. I can't believe if we'd had it in person that we would have had it on one evening. It was that long and that impressive. I do want to bring an attention to those graduates about two things. One, I've asked a number of people what they remembered about their graduation. And other than walking down the hill to the lot, I couldn't find anyone who would find it as memorable as the students this year will remember it because it was so different. So I think in some respects you've been very lucky with this level of graduation ceremony in spite of its significant difference. And as a message to any of those graduates who maybe want to go to college but didn't feel they were quite ready or had the money, the Board of Regents has announced that there is an allotment of money, I don't remember the exact amount, for free tuition to community colleges with an application that is available online at the moment and is due by July 15th. So if any of us know any of those graduates or graduates from somewhere else who might be interested in this, please get them to fill out another application. If they've been planning to go to college, they've filled out many already. We had at least 2 Head Start policy meetings over the last period of time where the discussion of the summer season was developed, because Head Start does have a summer session every year to a greater or lesser degree. And this year they're focusing primarily on those students that will be entering kindergarten this fall, in whatever condition we give them kindergarten, with setting up special, again, virtual, because we're still in that situation, sessions for them with things that they can do, not perhaps as focused on academic as being preparing for entering school, being self-confident, being able to explore, think through items and answer questions, all of those necessary facets that they will have. And in doing so, they're putting together some kits that the parents will be able to pick up for the student to use in conjunction with the virtual part of their training. I want to congratulate John LeBlanc on a very well-written letter that appeared in the Journal Inquirer this week or last week, whenever I read it. It's very well expressed and included some of the information you also mentioned tonight. And I have a little negative bit too. I have received 2 anonymous letters recently relating to school board activities. And I do not appreciate an anonymity under these circumstances. If you've got a good idea that we need to listen to, be secure in yourself to say so. If you think we have too many one kind of administrators or another, say so. If you think we should be aware of microwave, say so. In your name, not with just an anonymous letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I do have a copy of that letter here, and that was in my comments too, so. Ms. Thurston.
Hold on. Thank you, Joyce. Means a lot. Thank you.
Ms. Thurston, please.
Again, like everybody said, congratulations to the graduates. My husband was actually volunteered to take my cousin to get her diploma, and he crammed everybody into his pickup truck and was like the proud little step-in father, and just came home and was beaming from ear to ear that he was able to participate and help my cousin get her diploma. And it was just, he just really enjoyed it. And then we had people here to watch the ceremony. And I had a lot of people that I work with. I was showing them different pictures and videos of what Enfield did, and they were all jealous. They wanted to be part of what Enfield did because, they just sat back and they're like, well, we didn't do that. My kids are just getting their diplomas in the mail or, whatever. So I definitely sent emails to Erin and her team. They just went above and beyond. And I'm so proud to be a part of the board always, but right now especially, and all the work that they did for these kids to make it, a great graduation. So thank you, Erin and her team. And Chris, welcome back. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Thurston. Mr. Ryder.
Yes, thank you, Stacy, for saying that, because there were so many parents and neighbors so frustrated, because they didn't know what the plan was for graduation. And they were just concerned for their senior. Somebody had been in school 12, 13 years, and you want to see them graduate. They're moving on to the next stage in life. And there was a lot of, well, we heard this town's doing this, and somebody so-and-so did this in some school 3 states away. And what we, as a school district, and I don't mean we as in the 9 of us, but what we pulled off with Ms. Clark and her team at the high school was incredible. So again, congratulations to all the class of 2020 kids at the high school, but also I wanted to wish congratulations to the class of 2020 at the Enfield Adult Education. In their 100th anniversary class, the graduates of 2020, 20 adults graduated in addition to the 360 some odd at the high school. We had almost 24 adults graduate, 14 through the Enfield Adult Education GED program, 6 through the Credit Diploma program. So those are 20 more graduates we can add to our totals this year. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. So thank you to everybody at the Enfield Adult Ed, and congratulations to those additional 20 graduates that we had this month. Also, I just wanted to share that Enfield Adult Ed is also on Facebook and Twitter. So if any of the 9 of us aren't following them, please do so. Enfield Adult Ed has summer hours, which actually started today by appointment only. They're open certain days for tutoring, etc. 860-763-7032. I'll also put that on EnfieldPTO.com and the Enfield PTO Facebook page to share that. They're going to be adding additional offerings coming this fall. Again, once we figure out, whether we're going to be there in person or virtually, but either way, they're adding to their menu coming this fall, and there'll be a new brochure coming out at the end of July. So keep an eye out for that from Enfield Adult Ed. Also, happy belated Father's Day to all our staff, our board, our students and teachers, and thank you to everybody that reached out to me, and thank you to everybody And happy belated Father's Day to all of us out there. So I also wanted to thank the schools that did a little something extra the last couple of weeks, especially last week. At the K2 schools, at the 3-5 schools, JFK had done it a couple weeks earlier because of construction. But the teachers and the principals and the PTOs all stepped up. There was little goodbye parades. You could drive through the properties of our elementary schools and wave goodbye to your teacher. I know specifically I was involved at Eli Whitney, where we gave all the 5th graders a lawn sign, said a proud 5th grade graduate lives here. Whitney Wolves leading the pack. A lot of the PTOs and a lot of the schools and a lot of the staff and a lot of our principals all thought this through. They knew that they hadn't seen their kids in a couple of months. And almost all of them, if not all of them, planned a little something special during, hey, today's the day. If you're a 3rd grader and you left some belongings in the classroom, today's the day you come pick it up. And when the parents came by to pick up their items, there was freeze pops or signs or T-shirts, or all the 3rd grade teachers there and everybody got to wave. There was mascots out waving in the parking lot in this heat, to wave goodbye to the kids and the parents, for all of our kids that were in 2nd grade. And when they go back in the fall, they won't be at Barnard, Enfield Street, or Hazardville, but they'll be at the sister school. So they got a chance, to see the mascot one more time or to wave. So I just wanted to thank everybody for stepping up and doing something a little special for our younger kids. It's not just about the 12th graders and our Enfield adult ed class, but our 2nd graders and our 5th graders and our 8th graders at JFK. They left school on March 12th, and when they go back to school, whenever that is and however that is, it won't be at that building. So thank you to people that made that special as well. And to all of our preschoolers coming into kindergarten in the fall, we can't wait to meet you. We can't wait to see you and your families. And we'll figure out as soon as we can, as fast as we can, what that will look like. But again, if you're seeing this because you were on a Facebook page of one of the K2 schools, or you have a neighbor that's already in one of the K2 schools, so now you're starting to get a little bit more involved and trying to figure out who the 9 of us are and what school is going to look like in the fall for your 5th grader, your 5-year-old coming into kindergarten for the first time. We will get as much information out to you as well as we can, as soon as we can, I promise. The JFK yearbooks are delayed, so we don't need to ask. We know they're coming. As soon as we know we had some scheduled pickup days next week. That's not happening. As soon as we know more, we will hear from Dr. Barrios. The PTO will share that information. I'm on the JFK PTO as well, as I have a 6th grader heading into 7th grade in the fall. As soon as we know more, we'll get that out there. And again, one last thank you to all of our Enfield Public School staff, to our teachers, our admins, lunch staff, tutors, everybody that touches a piece of a second of our kids' days. Thank you for everything before the schools closed. Thank you for how you helped out in any way, shape, or form since schools closed. It was a stressful time, and I'm glad they're done with that. And as soon as we know more about the fall, we'll pass it on. So thank you. And did I hear something about a meeting July 7th?
Yes, sir.
When was that discussed? Just so I can make a note of that.
I'm going to discuss it during the JFK Building Committee.
Okay, great.
So you guys took all my thunder. That's why I went first with the graduation. But I want to. I forgot to thank the police for directing people through the drive-through graduation. They do it. Our police is top notch, as Jonathan said, and great people. I did make it out to Enfield Street School. I went out to Henry Barnard. I went to Hazardville Memorial. I went to Whitney. I drove through when they were doing the handout of their belongings and everything. And I just thanked all the staff that I could on behalf of all 9 of us, because it is 9 of us that do the work, not just a few. It's all of us that do this. So I didn't make a point. I wish I could have got to the other ones too, but I just want to thank all the staff. We have a phenomenal staff in this town, in our public schools, from the high school, from JFK, and from all the elementary schools, from Stower to the Learning Center. I just want to say thank you to everybody. And it's been, since March on, it's been a difficult time, but we're Enfield. We got through it, and we we were ahead of it to begin with. We were on top of it to start with, and we worked through it, and we're going to keep working through it. And that's what Enfield is, and Enfield, and even the town hall staff and everybody. It's just we'll work through this. We really will. So, but we are a team of 9, and every one of us puts our time in. Still waiting for that paycheck to come in, but we'll just keep waiting. But we do put our time in, and we care for Enfield. So I'll leave it at that. Any other comments that I missed? Don't see any hands. So we'll move to number 8, board committee reports, curriculum, Mr. Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just double checking that I wasn't muted. Yeah, so we met last week on Thursday, the 18th. We discussed 2 items in detail. We spoke about Project Lead the Way units that are being introduced or being adopted into the K-8 curriculum. It's also worth mentioning that the Project Lead the Way units are already in use at the high school. And just last November, they were also adopted at the pre-K level. The other item that we discussed in detail was the updates to the curriculum plan for next year. We continue to review the plan that is being developed for the 2020-21 school year. There was spirited conversation taking place in that regard. Everybody participated. I'm very happy of the interest and attention that everybody's giving to this particular subject. All of us have attended all the meetings. All of us have contributed with questions and comments, and I hope that Ms. Middleton as well believes that the contributions that we're making are helpful, because there are a few that are coming from us to her. Among the updates that she presented in terms of the development of the plan, Ms. Middleton listed some technical and functional enhancements that are being made by Microsoft to their Teams platform, in which we all agreed that they would be very beneficial for teachers and students. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday of next week. I believe that would be July the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Salazar. Finance, Ms. Costa.
Yep, the Finance Committee met on June 15th. In addition to our regular review of finances, we met with representatives from MML Services, which is the wealth management firm that manages our investment for the Talented and Gifted program. And we also continued our education on grants this month, focusing on Title III. And we talked about having our next meeting at Elkhorn together. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Policy, Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Policy Committee met last week, Tuesday, the 16th. We continue to make progress on the 5,000 series. We were also forwarded a few new policies by CABE that speak to, among other things, these types of virtual meetings. I requested availability of the committee to hopefully get back to me by this Thursday, so that we can schedule another meeting to hopefully finish up the 5,000 series and take a look at these items that were just sent to us by CABE. Also, just one thing to also note about the next policy committee meeting, whenever it may be. As you guys know, I've been talking a lot about my advocacy for allowing people to attend even our board meetings via these remote meeting technologies. Once I know when the next policy meeting will be, I do plan on putting on the agenda the meeting link so that people can show up, so that members of the community, if they want to see the meeting they can join via that method. So I think that'd be a nice experiment to see how it works. But once we know when that meeting is, I'm sure that information will be forwarded out.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Leadership, we have none. Joint Facilities is meeting this Thursday, and we're still trying to get a plan together for combating the roofs, and also the phase 3 finally got into the state. So we're hoping the phase 3 for Barnard we can get that done over the summer. JFK Building Committee met 2 weeks ago on the 11th, and it was brought up that they need to submit the last package to the state for the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And they need to submit that by July 9th. But to do so, they need a vote from our committee, our board. So I suggested that we have a meeting on July 7th. We actually moved July 14th meeting up to July 7th because it would be 2 weeks from today. So if there's any objection, I would like to call the next meeting July 7th so they can come on and discuss the package with us, and then we'll vote on it so they can proceed with this to the state with that. Joint Security, anyone?
Our next meeting is scheduled right now for Wednesday, September 2nd. Also, just to let you know, I just got a message from John LeBlanc. I guess his Wi-Fi has gone down, so he will not be with us for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. School Reopening Committee, Ms. Costa.
Yep, we last met on June 17th. We had Jeffrey Leonowitz and Mark Gar from Public Works at our meeting. We just discussed in general terms various topics that may not be part of the guidelines we're anticipating getting. So we talked about hand sanitizers, cleaning schedules, cleaning products, social distancing and the impact that it has on classroom size, automatic hands-free devices for sinks and doors, etc., whether or not we can have windows and doors open. But without formal state guidelines, we obviously can't proceed with any decisions or anything else. We do expect those guidelines later this week. And once released, we'll focus on specific actions and the best ways to get input from parents, staff, and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Your next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, correct?
Yes, correct. It's scheduled for Tuesday, which I believe is June 30th.
Yes. Joint Insurance hasn't met, but like Mr. Drezek said, there was the issue with the property and casualty, and also the workman's comp, that they're changing carriers. So we will discuss that at a future date. Any other committees that I forget any? No. So we move to number 9, approval of Mr. Drezek. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, just because several members have mentioned that they sat in on the webinar with Dr. Martha. If you recall, I have been having conversations with Mr. Rader from CABE about continuing the board's commitment to working with the Equity Toolkit. And actually, Dr. Martha, I had a conversation with her. She was going to be our facilitator. So we're hoping that eventually she will be our facilitator when we're able to start that process up again. And that is definitely still on the forefront of everyone's mind. And once we're able to continue, start that process up again, we will.
I'll just add, she was simply amazing, and I would love to be able to be in a room with her. She is an amazing woman.
So we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Number 9, approval of minutes, special Board of Ed meeting minutes, June 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Thurston, seconded by Ms. Hall. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. We have 8 in favor, 0 against. Number 10, approval of accounts and payroll for month of May 2020. Ms. Costa, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. The Finance Committee met virtually on June 15th, 2020 to review financial statements for the month of May year to date and to examine various documents related to finances. Our review concluded that there is nothing significant to report to the board. I move we accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of May, total expenditures amount to $6,186,270.88, broken down between payroll totaling $4,337,592.11 and other accounts totaling $1,848,678.77. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted for within the books of accounts. Copies of approval for check invoices are properly documented.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Costa, seconded by Ms. Hall. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. We have 8 in favor, 0 against. Ms. Costa.
The Finance Committee met virtually on June 15th, 2020 to review financial statements for grants during the month of May year to date and to examine various documents related to finances. Our review concluded that there is nothing significant to report to the board. I make a motion that we move to accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of May, the total grant and Head Start expenditures amount to $344,936.17, broken down between payroll totaling $322,927.10 and other accounts totaling $22,009.07. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted for within the books of accounts. Copies of approval for check invoices are properly documented.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Costa, seconded by Ms. Hall. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. 8 in favor, 0 against. Thank you. Any line item transfers?
None.
Thank you. Any number 11, correspondence or communications? None?
We have none. Nope.
Number 12, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Thurston, seconded by Ms. Costa. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Thank you all. You guys are the best. And we will see you soon, I hope. So thank you and good night.
Good night.
Oh, forgot. We are adjourned.